आतंक फैलाने वालों को कहना चाहता हूं, हर व्यक्ति को चुन चुन कर जवाब भी मिलेगा, जवाब भी दिया।
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. Now, in a very resolute stance, we've seen the India's Home Minister, Amit Shah, echoing what we've heard also from the Prime Minister. He's vowed to hunt down terrorists as Pakistan is grappling with panic and a lot of growing isolation. We'll put up those pictures on your screen that will help you understand how the story has moved through the day. There are also key developments that we'll tell you about in just a moment. But like I said, the word is absolutely clear that there is action and action is forthcoming. Hours earlier, you also had the Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, who held a conversation with his US counterpart with the US, then reaffirming what you see also on your screens, that they stand in solidarity with India and they also support its right to self-defense. Now, this followed an earlier conversation, another important one, with the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, who also spoke with the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and what he said also then is on your screens, demanding justice for the perpetrators, for the backers, and also for those who've planned the Pahalgam attack. And India is unequivocal about this, that we need to ensure that there is justice. So as investigations have intensified, and I'll tell you more about the developments that you've seen through the day. We've seen the NIDG also right there at the spot. We've seen them picking up a lot of important clues to understand who possibly is behind this. There is also an emphasis right now to speak to a lot of people to understand who really are those OGWs or the overground workers who possibly did provide support to them. And let's not forget, a lot of them right now are being questioned as we speak. And India then, as investigations continue to unfold, we are poised to decisively dismantle the terror fountainhead, because that is the most critical thing to do. Take a moment now to listen into what we heard from the Union Home Minister, Amit Shah.
90 के दशक से कश्मीर में जो आतंकवाद चला रहे हैं, उनके खिलाफ हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का जीरो टॉलरेंस का नीति है। हम मजबूती के साथ अपनी लड़ाई लड़े हैं और आज वो ये न समझ ले कि हमारे 27 नागरिकों का जान लेकर ये लड़ाई जीते हो। मैं सभी आतंक फैलाने वालों को कहना चाहता हूं कि लड़ाई का अंत नहीं है, एक मकाम है। हर व्यक्ति को चुन चुन कर जवाब भी मिलेगा, जवाब भी लिया जाएगा।
Let's bring up our straight questions. Remember, the Prime Minister had said, "Mitti mein mila denge." He made that quick assertion. Now you have a reassertion coming in from the Union Home Minister, Amit Shah. So what does that indicate? That is our first important question that we'll try to decode during the course of this show. The second straight question. Remember, Pakistan has tried to blackmail. It's tried to use the nuke card, but it has failed miserably at every such attempt. With the US now backing India, so what happens next? That is also an important aspect to look at. The third straight question, are we looking at a strike on terror camps that possibly is very, very certain? Could there be more than what we have seen in the previous attempts where Pakistan has always crossed the line? This brings us to our fourth straight question. Remember, there is a US nudge, whether Pakistan accepts it or not. But sooner or later, will it be forced now to own and to act on terror? Is that the way forward this time around? This brings us to our final straight question, which is the fifth one, and something that is most important and something that we've asked, I think, day in and day out here on Newsnight as we've covered this entire issue for you. Is there any way out? Is there still absolutely any way out or no escape now for an isolated Pakistan that clearly has to see the writing on the wall? And to answer those straight questions, I have two special guests joining us. First up, let me say good evening to Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon. He needs no introduction. He's a formidable gentleman. And I must tell our viewers, he's witnessed the Pulwama attack. He's also seen what happened post the Balakot strike. And he was also in Jammu and Kashmir when you had the abrogation of Article 370. So that is the kind of experience and nuance that he'll bring to this conversation. Dhillon sir, thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us here on NDTV. I want to know from you that we've heard some very straight comments coming in, first from the Prime Minister, now from the Union Home Minister Amit Shah, who says, chun chun kar badla lenge. What is your reading, your assessment of what possibly could happen?
Thank you, Dipti, and good evening to you and to all your viewers. See, Prime Minister and Home Minister statements are indicative of the resolve of the government, the resoluteness of the government, and governments and militaries don't act in haste. Governments and militaries don't act on emotions. And now that since such a strong statement has come from the top leadership of the country, there will have to be a lot of coordination which will be done. Unlike Uri and Balakot, where Uri was only an army operation and Balakot was an air force operation. This time around, it's going to be a whole-of-nation approach to include military options, diplomatic options, political and economic options, as also the options which we don't talk about most of the times. Diplomatic options, some things have already come on the table in terms of Indus Water Treaty, pruning down of embassies, calling back of defense attaches, and some visa stringent actions. So be patient. As of now, you see what is there in the open media. Every day the meetings are happening. Every day somebody is going and briefing other person. So it will happen, and it will happen at the time and place of India's choosing. When I say time, so it could be 9 days, it could be 10 days, it could be 20 days, and place where we want it to hurt the Pakistan most, bleed the Pakistan most, that is going to be our place of choosing.
Okay, interesting. So I think in your answer, you hold a lot of hints to what possibly could happen. But tell me another thing, sir. When you are looking at the entire situation, there is obviously the fact that you will have to deal with questions of whether this was an intel failure, whether the agencies could have prevented an attack as dastardly as this. But then there are also concerns of what Pakistan has been doing. And, has Pakistan also been trying to mount an offensive? And how is our response right now looking up? How do you read into both of these things together?
Dipti, if you look at it, we can talk about intelligence failure and security failure are a subject in itself. Yes, security lapse definitely, because in the Baisaran Valley, there was not a single policeman as per the reports available on media. And when you have 200, 500, 1,000 tourists at a place which is 40 minutes walk away from the road, you definitely have to give them the confidence and the local protection. I'll leave it at that. I'm very sure somebody is looking at it. Now, coming to the point which you are making, do we have to go alone or do we have to make a sort of a coalition? Today, the world is plagued by two things and everyone is worried about this. One is the Islamic terror. It may not be touching few countries today, but if we don't nip it in the bud now, it will touch those countries also after a few years. And second is the fear of nuclear assets falling in the hands of irresponsible people. Even today, we don't know who is actually in control of Pakistan. The military controls everything. There is a prime minister, so to say, who is there, and there is another gentleman in the jail who is supposed to be the most popular political leader, but he is in jail. And then till few days ago, no one knew who is the defense minister of Pakistan. Suddenly, the defense minister has come to the forefront, and the chief of army staff, after making that nonsense of a comment about Hindus and Muslims and Kashmir being a jugular vein, has gone into the hiding. No one has seen Asim Manur for the last 9 days. So we need to take the world along. We need to take the democracies along. And why they all will align with us is we are the largest democracy. It's easier to do business with the democracies. We are the 5th largest economy, going to be 3rd. People want to align with the economies who are doing well and not with Pakistan. If you align with it, it will start begging. And we are also 1/6 of the world in population or as a market. So anyone who is producing anything, even a needle, needs a market to sell it, and India is there. And in comparison to this, Pakistan is anywhere the terrorism happens, the dots get joined to Pakistan. It's a nuclear state, which is very, very dangerous place. The economy is in doldrums, the diplomacy is in doldrums, the politics, lesser said the better. And the military is absolutely corrupt. And the country is now questioning the military. So it is good to take countries along. We are a democratic country. We must obey the world order, unlike Pakistan. But we will strike at the time and place of our own choosing. The quantum and the quality of strike will be also of our own choosing. And this time, my understanding is we're going to hit at the terror factory base. That is the Pakistan military.
Okay. And as we were having this conversation, our team was able to also tell us that Vivek Karju, the former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs, is also with us. Sir, good evening and thank you for your time. With your permission, I just want to take one quick question with Lieutenant General Dhillon before he exits this show. And I also want to tell our viewers that we were looking at a lot of these images of the ceasefire violations that have continued unabated since April the 22nd. That is also a story that Pakistan does not want to talk about. And also, Dhillon sir, as we were having this conversation, there was another graphic going in of the might of both India and Pakistan. And again, clearly the numbers will give us the story. But tell me something. There has been a lot of conversation about these non-state actors, these so-called non-state actors in Pakistan. But is it time now to hit at perhaps the jugular vein of Pakistan, the deep state, Rawalpindi there, the ISI? Because isn't that deep state behind what we have seen in Pakistan so far?
Dipti, non-state actors, we've seen Hizbul Mujahideen, Harkatul Ansar, Tehreek this and Tehreek that, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Resistance Front, the Jaish-e-Mohammed. All these are creations of Pakistan ISI and Pakistan military. Today they are with some other name, tomorrow they will come with some other name. And within Pakistan, they are supposed to be doing some social work. There's a front. So we need to just forget about these things. Moment we hit the Pakistan military, their support and their funding would cease. And we have the wherewithal to talk in the military parlance. We are a much bigger, military force as compared to Pakistan. And the most important thing is there's something called war fighting stamina of a country vis-a-vis the other country. Our war fighting stamina is much higher than Pakistan's war fighting stamina when we are fighting each other. We can amass the numbers which are much more in ratio at the time and place of our own choosing. Pakistan is now stretched from Afghanistan border to Iran border to Gilgit-Baltistan, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Baluch Liberation Army, Sindh province, Cholistan desert fiasco. So they are spread all along. Their economy is down, their military is down, their military is stretched. Right moment to strike. Right moment to strike. And as the escalation ladder keeps going up, their war fighting stamina will continue to reduce with every escalation. And it would become easier for India because we can sustain ourselves for a longer duration militarily. And of course, diplomatic effort, military, economic effort, and political effort are going to be in conjunction with the military option.
All right. Always a pleasure having this conversation with Lieutenant General Dhillon, who has a lot of these interesting insights, anecdotes, and also talking of the way, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And now let me again say good evening to Vivek Karju, who's been patient enough to wait during the course of this conversation. Sir, before you came in on the show, we discussed a lot about what possibly could be done as far as these kinetic options are concerned. Now, we've heard two important political statements of intent from the Prime Minister, later from the Home Minister earlier today, who has said, chun chun kar badla lenge. When you hear everything so far on this story, what is your assessment or what possibly are the options India could be looking at?
Well, I think the Prime Minister has given the armed forces a clear direction. He has said that the nation is angry The Prime Minister has the mandate of the nation, and he's told the army, the defense forces, rather, that the nation expects and that he has every confidence, the Prime Minister himself has every confidence in the defense forces to deliver a crushing blow to Pakistani terrorism. He has also given them a free hand with regard to the modalities of how they wish to carry out and fulfill this objective. As far as the action itself is concerned, I suppose the army, the defense forces will report back to the Prime Minister and through him perhaps to the CCS of what they have in mind and give them an evaluation of the different scenarios that can be looked at.
Okay, and when you say this, I also have another straight question that we had discussed about how Pakistan is getting isolated. But I don't think that's the important story anymore. How do you see the responses so far of different world capitals? And when you see this fight against terror, the very fact that the US today has called out Pakistan for what it is, though it has also said that we must de-escalate tensions, what is your reading of a lot of maneuvering, possibly, Vivek Kaju, that possibly could be happening?
My focus is on the latter part of what the US has said. When the US speaks to us, it naturally will first of all focus on Pakistan's involvement in terror, and that is something well known. The Pakistanis have practiced it for over 3.5 decades. No one in the world is ignorant of Pakistan's involvement in state-sponsored terror, in cross-border terrorism. In fact, if you read the Indo-Saudi joint statement, the Prime Minister had to cut short his visit to Saudi Arabia, but a joint statement was issued that talks of cross-border terrorism too. And Saudi Arabia is an old friend, quote-unquote, of Pakistan. However, let us be clear in our minds that the focus of the world and the major powers is today in wanting the two countries to exercise restraint. That does not mean that we should not proceed in such a crucial manner, exercising our strategic autonomy. We must do, and the government must do, what it thinks is in India's interest. But the world community is concerned. It is concerned about escalation. And I carefully heard General Dhillon. The thing that he did not mention, which is something that the world community always has at the back of its mind, is that both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. And it is concerned about a situation arising where both countries go up the escalatory ladder. That does not mean, I repeat, that we should not take such action as is needed for us to combat terrorism and to fulfill the objective that the Prime Minister has set out for the armed forces. But it does mean that we have to be conscious of what the world is saying.
I think that's a fair and a very balanced point, Vivek Kaju, that you do put out. Now, I just want to, jog your memory and also viewers' memory on a number of points that India has made vis-a-vis the world and vice versa. The Prime Minister has said multiple times in relation to the Russia-Ukraine war that this is not the era of war. And clearly you have seen India reaching out, with that white flag and saying we must not exercise that option in case that is just not the only option left. But what do you do in a situation, Vivek Kaju, where you have a war foisted on you, where you have 26 of your innocent civilians that are gunned down in this dastardly attack. And when you're dealing with a rogue neighbor like Pakistan, that in spite of everything, will never see the writing on the wall.
It has always been a very, very difficult situation for India to handle. And I think, to be honest with ourselves and to be realistic, we've searched for answers for the last 35 years. We went through a process where we did not take kinetic action. Then came the surgical strikes, which I believe were correct. Then came Balakot, which I also feel was a correct response to the Pulwama terrorist attack. Now, will Pakistan give up terrorism? I have grave doubts, because Pakistan has made the use of terror as part of its strategic doctrine.
Yes.
You mentioned that the Prime Minister has said this is not an era of war. The Prime Minister has not said that countries should not defend themselves, that countries should not exercise the right of self-defense. The Prime Minister has not said that countries must suffer terrorism and just sit with their hands folded and say that, look, we've got to just accept. So a distinction has to be drawn on what the Prime Minister said in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war and in what India faces and has been facing at the hand of Pakistan. What has the Prime Minister said? He has said, take such action that will deliver a crushing blow to Pakistani terror. He has not asked that there should be war.
Yes.
His focus is on ending terror. Therefore, I think a distinction has to be drawn between the Prime Minister's comments to President Putin. I think he made them soon after, he made them perhaps in September
Correct.
of 2022, when if my memory is correct, when the Russian attack on Ukraine began. It had begun in February of that year. And he was right. This is not an era of war. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that no eras of war.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that nations and peoples who suffer from terrorism should not adopt all means that they can to stop terrorism.
Okay.
But I will again remind you that when you draw or when you analyze what the major powers are saying, what the United States is saying, then always focus on what is their interest.
Absolutely.
They are not, just one more sentence, they are not concerned, they will give sympathies and they will express all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, their people are not dying, our people have died. So their interest is to stop escalation. They don't want that problem. That is their primary interest, and we should be very clear in our analysis.
All right, I think that's a good note to end this conversation on. And I think you've answered a lot of those people who've actually been saying that, look at the US that is wanting to de-escalate tensions. But then clearly, you've made that distinction to tell us why this is important right now to do it for your people, for your national security. Vivek Kajoo, the former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs, thank you so much, sir, for your time, your perspective on the show. With this, also time for us to quickly bring to you now Newsnight's parting shot. So look at the keywords that's going to go up on your screens, because that are going to be the important takeaways of the discussion so far. The die is cast. No one denies this. The Prime Minister, the Home Minister have made it very, very clear. This brings us to our second important takeaway again. That will tell you that there is a plan and there is going to be a definite and a resolute action which is needed this time around. You need to be very clear about this fact that India has to act, India has to respond, because our patience is not infinite. But then what possibly could happen next? What is, the option that we are discussing? Only kinetic options, or there could be still non-kinetic options? After both, you've heard the Prime Minister and the Home Minister reasserting the same thing, right? From mitti mein mila denge to chun chun ke badla lenge. This tells you that a military action is likely. Pakistan and its proxy war is something that not just India, but the world has seen for the last many, many decades, at least for the last 3 decades. And that is how Pakistan playbook really works. But today, Pakistan has actually hit the wall. We've seen covert raids as a response to a lot of those, terror ailments that were infected on India, right to the surgical strikes. But clearly, these options now are not good enough. You clearly need to set a new deterrent when it comes to Pakistan. So it is not a question of if. We reiterate that again. It is not a question of if, ladies and gentlemen, but it is also just about when and how. Because the Prime Minister has said that the armed forces will decide the timing and the place, because defeating terror and the fountainhead, that is Pakistan, the rogue state, the deep state, is our ultimate motive. We'll continue to track that story. Thank you so much for your time. Good night.